You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, welcome back. Really excited. I love social media, or aspects of social media, I should say. But one of the things I really enjoy is seeing when people post that they've achieved their first deer. And the lady I have on with us tonight has just achieved that, which I am still striving for. So I'm a little envious, but super excited for her. So I'd like to welcome Naomi to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you.
So let's find out a little bit about you first before we get into the story, which I'm dying to hear. So where are you from and how did you get into hunting?
Yep. So I am from Sydney, so very much a suburban girl from the Parramatta area. And it's funny, I almost feel like a little bit of an imposter sitting here on a hunting podcast with you. I only started hunting about 4 or 5 years ago. So I've come to it quite late in life. We talk about, or I joke about being a late onset hunter. I grew up in a real suburban family, no gun exposure at all. If my sister and I did cowboys and Indian type stuff and, finger guns, then, we would be in a lot of strife with mum. So it just wasn't that sort of a household. And a few years ago, one of our good mates randomly decided that he was going to start hunting and said to my husband, hey, come along. Now, my husband has had some shooting experience. He was quite a good target shooter when he was in his early teens. But of course, kids get told they're good at something, so immediately decide they hate it. So he kind of gave it up and left it. But they went out hunting a couple of times and I sort of went, this is a bit crap, sitting at home while they go out on weekends away. It seemed to be having a bit of fun. So I went and spoke to our mate and said, hey, is this a boys thing only, or am I allowed to start coming along? He went, no, of course, come along. And yeah, here we are. So a few years later, right into it.
Oh, yeah, that's cool because I wouldn't say similar. I grew up in Liverpool area in just the suburbs. Yep. And I remember the same thing. My dad has not been a shooter or anything like that, same as my mum, and none of the extended family were. And my experience would have been the same. Growing up, I actually probably remember my first gun per se was a carved out wooden sort of gun with my initial thumb tacked onto it that my grandfather made me, and he gave one to my brother as well. And that was literally what we started, and playing that cowboys and Indians, and that was my sort of first memory or exposure to any sort of, potential to do anything with firearms. So it's interesting. I did do a lot of like fishing and camping growing up. So that was, I guess, where my love for the outdoors came from. Did you have that like growing up? Were you intrigued about the outdoors? Were you ever out in the outdoors? Like what happened there?
I grew up as such not an outdoors kid. I was the book nerd, that sort of side of things. And, the idea of going camping and whatnot was so foreign. It just wasn't something that the family did at all. I think part of that, my parents split when I was young. And so mum being a single parent, it's not typically the thing that mum tends to do. And I think that potentially is changing a little bit, hopefully. But it still is such that's dad's thing in a lot of families, right? So it just didn't really ever happen. And even as I grew up and got older, we've started camping only for hunting. So we didn't start hunting because we're outdoors. We actually have started now camping to get access to places and get out and about, which has been one of the really great things about falling into this, because it has exposed me to the outdoors and getting out. Now, to be fair, we're pretty bougie campers. So, we got ourselves a camper trailer and all that sort of stuff. But it's been a real life-changing thing in the last few years, driven by that hunting experience.
I think it comes down to life stages. I swore to myself that I'd never get a camper trailer or a caravan, that I would, I've got the swag and that I'd do it. But with the 3 kids now and being so young, the tent just becomes such a hard option to put it up because you've got to look after the kids and you're trying to do it on your own. It's not like the wife and I used to throw up our large tent. That was easy when it was just us. When there's 3 little humans running around, it just changes the dynamic altogether. So I've actually just bought a camper trailer in the last week and a half, and we're just putting the final touches on it to really make it as quick as possible. So getting the rooftop tent, pop up, just make sure that it's simple, easy, literally come home, hook it up and go, because that was what we were finding is we loved getting out. And actually it was funny, my wife counted down and said, I haven't been camping in 3.5 years. And she's like right on the money of how much, because she misses it so much. And she's not jealous when I go away hunting. She is a little bit, but it's because I get to camp while I'm hunting, and she hasn't had that since the kids came along. So we did the whole Airbnb stuff, but it's not the same when you go away and you're staying in like a house. It's just, we want that feeling of back to camping. It's just such a great, just being out there, hearing the nature. It's so good. So
I work in a corporate environment, and I just love the fact that when I say to the guys, I'm not contactable this weekend, I'm actually not contactable, because odds on there's no phone reception where I am. So, and it's nice that it's kind of enforcing a little bit of a break and getting out into nature and away from the city for a while.
I deliberately try and pick spots where I don't have phone reception because it's just this day and age that you automatically just find yourself grabbing your phone and doom scrolling or whatever you want to call it, because you just, what's there, it's just now a habit. And I love when I get away just to be able to cut ties with it all and just be immersed in where I am and the experiences that are going on rather than looking through the screen. So that's a big out of the blue change. So getting into hunting from nothing.
Yep.
How's that journey gone? Like, have you found more friends in it? Have you found clubs? How have you gone about your journey?
Well, we and I say we because it's something that Rod, my husband, and I have really started doing together. I joined him up to the Australian Deer Association, so the ADA, about I think 4 or 5 years ago. So I was stuck for a Christmas present, and I was Googling hunting clubs in Sydney area, and this ADA popped up. I'd never heard of it before and went, oh, this sounds all right. $100 for the year's membership at that point in time. You get a magazine, all that sort of stuff, and joined him up. And after a few months, we sort of went, hey, we should probably go and actually check this out, pop into a meeting or so. And we were sort of trying to get out ourselves and had no clue what we were doing. There's only so much meat eater videos on YouTube can teach you. But popped into a Deer Association meeting, which in itself was an enlightening experience. So walking in there as a woman, and I remember doing the head count on that first meeting that I went to. So there were 35 people in the room, which was a low turnout, as I've since found out. And there was exactly 2 women in the room, of which I was one. I went, okay, this is a bit interesting. But it's kind of accelerated quite quickly from there. I think with any club or association you're involved in, you get as much as you back as you put in. So I've become quite active with the ADA in the last few years, and I actually now sit on the national board for the ADA. So I was appointed to the board a couple of months ago. And then Rod, my husband, so he sits as vice president of our Sydney branch. So we're right into it now, which has been fantastic. And when we talk about the journey to that first deer, I think it actually was, people were starting to feel a bit sorry for me. I've become known as the unluckiest hunter in the branch.
I've got that pegged. All right, that's my title.
So not for lack of trying in terms of getting out and learning, and people taking me out into state forests and showing me their spots. Like literally people were taking me, this is my guaranteed spot, Gnomes. And we'd walk around for 3 or 4 hours and they'd be like, there's no bloody deer here. What is going on? Like, I tell you, I'm the jinx. I'm the jinx. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's been some really amazing people through that have reached out and have shared their knowledge and shared their expertise. And I think that's the thing. I talk a lot about ADA as part of this whole hunting thing, because I don't think if we didn't have as active a branch as what we have here in Sydney and such a great group of people, I may not have followed through as much as I have on this whole hunting thing, because it was so foreign to me. And it's really just gotten us right into it and has helped us learn so much. So for anyone that might be listening to this going, how the hell do I get into this? Like in late 30s or 40 or approaching that sort of age, get onto your local branch of a hunting club and find a good one that's got active people, because it will make the world of difference, particularly when you just have no clue what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm a bit sort of taken aback there. Firstly, congratulations on your appointment. That's fantastic. I'm a big advocate for more women in the hunting scene, sport, whatever you want to call it, because I really do feel hunters' numbers need to grow in order for us to sustain and have a larger presence and voice to keep doing what we're doing. And I think that's pretty evident with in the last couple of days, we've seen some new, a new proposal from WA and what they want to do with restricting guns and the like over there, and they're seeking submission on feedback. So I do encourage absolutely everyone to give some feedback there, because that's it's quite concerning, some of the dot points there in saying, I don't want to go into it tonight, but there's a lot there because I haven't fully unpacked it and I don't like sort of shooting from the hip. But there's a few things that I sort of just noted and went, wow, that's not great. I know a few people have already put some things out there in regards to it to raise attention to it. So have a look at that. But I genuinely think that because we have such a small percentage of female shooters and hunters, that is a massive growth opportunity for us to capitalize on. And I think that on the back of COVID, where people were a little bit unsure of food, of just availability and how quickly the supply chain can be impacted, there's never been a better time to try and capitalize on that population group.
Yeah, and for me, the real driver is food. I talk about being a foodie. In the last few years, I've gotten into weird and wacky stuff like canning and food preservation in that regard. So, there's literally jars of venison shelf stable sitting in the pantry at the moment. And it is really all about the food. And that's not to have a go at trophy hunters or anything like that, because everyone's got their own motivations. Now, if I got something that's got a great set of headgear, that's a bonus. But the primary factor is really the food. And I'm a big proponent on eat what you hunt and going after it in that regard. So again, ADA talks a lot about venison diplomacy. So when I first started this, Mum was horrified, absolutely horrified. So, and just would not engage on it, wouldn't have a conversation with me about it in any way, shape or form. And now we'll be driving home from a weekend away and I'll get a phone call and it'll be Mum asking if she has to make some space in the freezer. So, hitting me up for a chunk of venison. So it's been a real turnaround. And I think for suburbanites as well, a lot of the fear, if want of a better word, just comes from the unknown. So, I'm a firearms shooter. I've played with a bow a little bit, but I'm quite terrible. So, for the moment, it's going to be rifles, but it's just such an unknown. And a lot of people don't even realise that we've got deer in Australia or that you can hunt them. So it's such an opportunity for, I won't say it's a free resource as such because it's the most expensive free meat you'll ever eat, but it's out there and it's just out there for the taking. So we've just got to get into it and give it a go.
Oh, you're preaching to the converted. And I just love hunting. So for me, that's the reason the podcast started, is I just like talking about it because I can't get out as much with the new kids and whatnot. And whether it be with the bow, whether it be with the rifle, just getting out there, and it's just so much fun. And then when you're onto deer or finding sign, and that's cool too.
Yeah.
All right, so my ears just pricked up when you were talking about canning venison. So can you talk us through that a little bit? I haven't heard too many people doing that, so I'm very interested.
Yeah, it's It's probably a little bit of a misnomer calling it canning because it's actually in jars, but the process is referred to as canning. So I started doing some canning and pickling a few years ago, so just before COVID hit, because one of our neighbours was working on a cucumber farm and just kept delivering literally bags and bags of cucumbers every weekend to us. I'm like, what the hell am I doing with all these bloody cucumbers? So I started making pickles and stuff like that out of these cucumbers. And then that's progressed onto canning meats and other things. So basically the process is through a pressure canner. So it looks like a pressure cooker, but it is a different piece of kit. So please don't anyone go and try and can in your pressure cooker. It's not safe. But basically you pack it into jars, throw it in your pressure canner for allotted period of time. And then that's shelf stable sitting there for 18 months to 2 years, potentially longer, but the official word is no longer that. So I do a lot of things like spaghetti bolognese, chili con carne, all that sort of stuff because it gets it out of the freezer, makes some more space, and also it creates convenience meals. So instead of on a Friday night going, oh, let's just order pizza, it's like there's a jar of chili con carne ready to go that can take 5 minutes to heat up, bag corn chips and you're on your way. So
there you go. So my wife dabbled in a bit of pickling too with her veggies because we run our own veggie gardens and whatnot here, and it's a good way to preserve
jealous of the space. Yep.
Yeah, no, well, we're very lucky. We're on an acre out here, so it's nice that we've got the space to do it because we didn't do that in the last place that we had. It was the typical 400 odd square meter house in the suburbs. So she's done a little bit of pickling, and I was just trying to work out whether you would put it in the pickling sort of juice, if you want to call it that. And I was like, I don't know how that would go with meat, but that makes more sense now in what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's been a real learning curve with that one, but it's been really complementary to the whole hunting piece. And it's funny, it's almost like this hunting has really driven a complete just change in mindset, for me. The dream would be to be out of Sydney and on some acres and all that sort of thing, but maybe in a few years' time.
I think that's the doorway hunting opens up. And I always, when I talk to people about hunting, it's so much more than hunting.
Yeah.
And it's not, well, for me anyway, it's not about killing the animal.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing that encompasses the journey on it, the tech. I love the tech and the gear. And, I just bought a thermal monocular, and I'm always just looking at new stuff or unpacking and finding what works or what doesn't, what's better to use. And that then translates. That's right. It is expensive free meat. And it's then flows into the camping side and how can I do that better, or what can I do to it just keeps this, the vac sealers and it's endless on what you could want and do. And I sit there and go, geez, I'd love a cool room.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I'd love this. And you're just constantly thinking about those things. You also mentioned there that your mum was sort of not into it, and then all of a sudden she's wanting to open the freezer up to make sure she gets some venison. I do really think that's also a massive driver for getting people into hunting, or not even getting into hunting, but just igniting the curiosity, because everybody eats, and we all know who people probably listening to the podcast, we all know how much venison is such a delicious meat resource that we've got here in the country. How did you expose her to venison and getting her on board with that if she was so against it?
Well, it was if she was coming to my house, that's what she was going to get fed.
No choice.
And I don't remember the last time we actually had beef at home. So the red meat is venison for us now. And I think it was that thing. A lot of people are kind of aware of venison, but a lot of people in Australia haven't even actually eaten it because it is such a delicacy and an expensive thing. It goes into fine dining restaurants and things like that, but people don't actually get to access it day to day. So I think just getting it into people's mouths and getting them to try it and see that it is actually a really amazing protein, super healthy, as we all know. So, and that's been that's kind of one of the key drives for me as I talk about with hunting, but also being so active with the ADA. It's how do we get this through to people? The way to people's hearts is through their stomachs, right? So it's about a great meat, a great resource. So let's actually get more recreational hunters out there, bringing it home and putting it on their plates for their families. Deer do need to be managed in this country. I mean, yes, they're an introduced species. There's no doubt about it, but they need to be managed. But hunters are a great way to do that. Letting us out there and making it happen. So public land hunting in Australia, we're really fortunate because even, again, you talk about meat eater and videos like that, and watching Steve Rinella's early stuff when he was really cooking, that really got me enthused into the whole food side of it. But we're really fortunate here in Australia that we've got more access to public land hunting year round, not in every state, but New South Wales absolutely, but year round access. We're the hunting heartland of America, you're talking tags and all that sort of stuff. So we're really, really lucky in terms of being able to get out there and do it, bring it home, cook it up. So.
Oh, look, again, everything you're saying I'm in complete agreement with, and it's one of the things for me that I'm really concerned with seeing things like the National Feral Deer Action Plan and the mention of poisoning. And I know some people go, oh, they're just wanting to approve it and they don't want to use it. And there's all these different elements to it. I just think it's such a wasted opportunity from, we're never going to wipe them off the landscape.
Exactly.
We most definitely need to control the numbers.
Yep.
I'm not someone sitting here saying we shouldn't control the numbers. By all means, we should. But there are better ways to do it than just dumping poison or shooting and leaving rot. There are ways we could actively use them as a resource, a financial resource, both for the government to put money back into conservation, for farmers who are dealing with a pest problem. There's ways to do it and do it better. The problem is, I think we are not talking to people that really are looking at it from that perspective, because maybe and I do feel the big issue is the firearms. That's when you're talking to people that make decisions. I've spoken to quite a few politicians and things like that. They don't want guns. And that's the driving force, because what other primary industry, and I'll call it that because when you look at shooting, hunting and fishing in the DPI report here in New South Wales, when you combine the two, they're the top primary producer for the economy. Hunting was fourth.
Yep.
So what other one is under this massive attack and not being looked at as something that we can grow and develop? It just astounds me, to be honest, because it's such a underutilized or undercapitalized opportunity for everybody to be winners.
I think it comes down to, again, exposure and people just not knowing. So, firearms are obviously a hot button topic all the time, but it's getting people to understand that it's a tool and it's a means to an end. And for some people, obviously, there's sporting shooters and all that sort of stuff as well. But it's not an evil thing. And the people that are out there hunting are generally good people, providing for the family, getting outdoors, mental health benefits, all that sort of stuff. There's so many things that are just plus, 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 as well as the environmental aspects of it. So, we talk about the Deer Association being a conservation association. There is absolutely an acknowledgement of management, but it's how can we allow more recreational hunting to make use of what's there. It hurts my soul when you hear about, the aerial shoots and that sort of thing, and just having these animals hit the deck and gone. So a friend of mine, his girlfriend is actually vegan. He's a hunter. She's vegan, but she chooses not to eat it. That's fine. But she actually then is quite supportive of him hunting, because she's of the mentality of that animal's been out there living its best life, dropped on the spot. It's not suffered. It's not been processed. It's living a wild, happy life, and that's it. And it's the hunting is being done with such a great deal of respect for the animals. So, I think that's the thing about focusing on the food for me is really how you get people around it. My mother-in-law as well, we're still trying to get her over the line on goat. She hasn't quite come across the line on goat because I do make a very nice goat curry. But it's just understanding that these animals are actually having a great life. And as someone that eats meat, you don't have to get out there and get your hands dirty necessarily, but at least having an appreciation for it. And since we've been hunting, we eat less meat than what we used to. So not because we're relying solely on our hunting, because we'd probably be almost vegetarian some days, but it's a matter of the appreciation for those animals.
I think that because it's so easy now to go to the supermarket, that has really impacted hunting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now don't see the need to hunt. And I've had that a lot in that conversation is, why do you need to hunt when you can just go to the supermarket?
Yeah.
And it's a very narrow sort of minded opinion from my point of view, because if that's what you want to do, by all means do it. I have no issue. Not everybody could be hunters in the world because there's just too many people now. And I have no issue with that, but not wanting others to do it and feed their family, know where the food came from.
Yeah.
Do that themselves, have that sense of accomplishment, pride, not wasting food. You can just harp on about it all day that there is so many additional benefits, and that the actual pulling the trigger or letting the arrow go is such a minute part of hunting.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And it's something that I try and convey to a lot of people that are not typical hunters, and they don't understand it, because there is this, I guess, disparity out there and a bit of a, look, I don't want to offend people, and I probably will, and I'm not meaning to, but a lot of people see hunting and the first thing they go to is trophy hunting.
Yeah.
And that people are just shooting an animal to take the head off.
Yeah.
And look, I know people that they do just that and the meat rots. And I don't think that's a great look, and I don't think it's good for what we do, and it's a waste. And I don't think if you do that, then you can complain about the aerial culling and the things too. So it's a really touchy subject, because I have no problems with people wanting to hunt trophies and do that. That's fine. I have no problem. But if you're not using the meat with it, it then leaves a bad taste in the mouths of the population who aren't hunters. And I think in this day and age with media, social media, how the world's going, is that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And that if you are a trophy hunter, by all means do it, but by all means use the meat too. It's not that hard to do that part as well. And then it's a little bit more palatable for those that aren't hunters.
Yes. And it comes back to the way to someone's heart through their stomach. And it's not even just about handing meat to other people, though that's a great way to do it, have people around for dinner and a barbecue. But I think it's people then seeing that this animal is being fully utilised. We still have a really small number of Australians that are vegan or vegetarian, but people want to see animals being treated well. And when you talk about the deer management plan and the poisons aspect of it, that just, I think, is heartbreaking. That's the direction we want to go down, or not that we want to go down, but that's being talked about going down. Because 1080, which is probably what it will end up being, in most countries in the world, it's actually not used. So that's alarming in itself. But I think even if it's probably one of the areas of common ground that I think hunters really have in common with any animal rights activist is around that poisonings piece. So, and that's when I talk about, the friend of the friend with his vegan girlfriend, she chooses not to eat it. That's fine. But she understands that that animal didn't suffer. It had a great life, completely free range. The animal is healthy. It's healthy meat as well. So it's a really nice way to go about it. And that's where, for me, it is about the food. trophy's lovely, but there's totally a secondary piece. If that, something walks through with some amazing headgear, then beauty, but every piece of that animal is coming home.
Yeah, and I think, just to touch on that poison side of it, as you mentioned, that a lot of parts of the world have actually said, no, we're not going to use 1080. I was reading in New Zealand that when they use it in certain areas, there is a shelf life where they tell people not to eat the meat that's harvested in that area. Now, that just automatically, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was like 90 days. But even like in the water, there was it was a whole document, and I'm going to go into it again and break down a bit more of that side of it, because I was just like, that scares the crap out of me, that we're going to be using something that's going to go into the environment that is going to potentially mean that the advice is don't eat any animals in this area for 90 days. So there is a waste again. Then we're now talking that, like, what's the difference between aerial culling? It's going to be something that now even hunters who want to use the meat are probably going to say, hey, it's tainted. I'm being told not to eat it. Do you really want to chance it? I know I personally wouldn't.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the biggest alarm bell, that we've got such a beautiful creature that is a resource that, yes, I appreciate the environmental impacts that they do have. And yes, we need to manage the numbers, but we're never going to wipe it off the landscape.
Yeah.
It's now time to change the conversation and say, hey, we want to minimize the numbers, but also that we want to conserve other areas and use them to fund it, rather than just say, hey, let's, spend, I think it's something like $70,000 to $90,000 a day or a night on the helicopter culling. That's a significant chunk of money, where I'm sure, being from Sydney, and I know, there's a lot of Sydney hunters that travel a long way and spend a lot of money, that if they had the opportunity somewhere close to home to pay to get some free range venison, and I've said it before, set up shooting lanes and baiting stations in the national park, very safe, have it in a controlled circumstance, have people pay for it. I'd be happy to pay money to go out and harvest a deer under those conditions and be able to feed the family and know that I'm also putting money back into conservation.
Yeah.
Like that, it's a win-win. I don't get it.
It's interesting you talk about distance as well for, Sydney-based people. So, the nearest state forest for me is about 3.5 hours. So I'm envious of people that are living on the outskirts of Sydney in that regard. And there's lots of people that are in that same boat. So, again, ADA, but that's one of the things around just what are the opportunities to unlock more public land for hunters and for recreational hunters, and doing it in the right way. So the fact that we're in state forests, so one of the chaps who's a member at the Sydney branch was, so John was president of the Game Council back in the day, and was one of the people that was key in getting state forests unlocked for hunting. So, he's an amazing person. You sort of just think the battles that happen to get that across the line, but there's such an opportunity to do more. So there are people, the you and I of this world, that, there's an opportunity to get out there and bring it home and feed the family. And given the growing movement around food and provenance and people wanting to know where their food is coming from, it doesn't get much closer when you've walked out into a forest and actually brought it home yourself.
Oh, and look, I'm big on the whole sustainability thing. Like the more you can be sustainable for yourself, it's just, I think that's a win.
Yeah.
I love what they do in other countries and some parts here where they have community gardens and people grow and trade and things like that. I think they're all great things. Now, yes, probably not great for the economy, but, from knowing where the food comes from having that deeper connection with that, like, I love the fact that we've got vegetable gardens here, and my wife loves being out there, and we take the kids out there every afternoon.
Right.
And I love getting home and seeing my not my youngest, I always say that, my oldest boy now, just run down to the strawberry patch and start taking strawberries. Yeah. And that is just, it's great. It's so much better than, having them run home and say, I want my phone or something like that. And so I feel very lucky that we can do that here. And as you said, we've got the ability, and I'd hate to live in Queensland. My parents live up in Queensland. I would hate to live there just for the simple fact they don't have the public land access that we do. Yes, it's a bit of a hike. I'm roughly the same. I mean, the bow hunting forest Belanglo is only, about an hour, but for the state forests that I hunt are generally between 3.5 and 4.5 hours away. So it is a big time commitment. It's multiple days to make it worthwhile. There's so much for it. But then I also appreciate that that's doing a good thing for the economy and getting out to country towns and spending money in those areas.
Yeah.
So I'm not fully against that too. And it's something to look forward to. I find it drives, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel. For me as a school teacher, I sit there and go, I hunt in school holidays.
Yeah.
And that is the light at the end of the tunnel. So I know a lot of teachers love counting down the term as students do as well. Probably not so much parents because, the kids are home. But then, that's just that additional bonus. Holiday time means I'm going to get out there. I'm going to be back into the bush. I'm going to be camping. I'm going to be hunting, getting to, go to these rural towns. And that's always something fun too, to get out of the city and experience the different side of what this great country has to offer as well.
Yeah. It's funny too, because, you talk about distance and school holidays, and not a school teacher, but it's, a laugh that's probably part of why it took me so bloody long to get that first deer was just time. So when it is such a hike to get out to somewhere, it's worth it, but it is a time commitment. So, suddenly it's not a day trip, or very rarely, sometimes a day trip, but it's a very long day. So just being able to get out frequently enough to actually find the deer, learn, as I say, when you've not been doing it for your life and you feel like you're catching up on a lifetime's worth of knowledge in a couple of years, but just being able to actually find the time to get out.
I think a lot of people miss that. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that reach out and, it's been obviously quite well documented on here that I haven't got a deer yet. And a lot of people reach out about like, how have you not got one? And, I've even had people say, oh, you're lying. You must have. There's so many. And a lot of those people have not lived in Sydney. So I don't think they have the understanding that there isn't a state forest 30 minutes away where I can just go and, I can be there regularly so I can understand where they're moving, get a really good understanding and idea of what's happening to be more successful.
Yeah.
It's almost, and I sort of look at this, is that you go in every 3 months like I do to a state forest and it's almost new again.
Yeah.
I go into areas that I was in 3 months ago and I sort of like found a lot of, whether it be a scrape or whether it be a really heavily used game trail, I get there and go, oh, that's gone. It's 3 months has changed the whole dynamic of what is going on there. And then that just adds it to, and it just adds an extra layer. And I'm not complaining about that because that's part of the fun too, like getting in there and finding them again. And I've been pretty lucky that most of the state forest hunts I go on, I have seen deer.
Yeah.
The last one down the Snowies, again in 2 different forests, bumped deer, saw deer, had a couple not know I was there. That is awesome. And I sort of sit there and get so excited about that, but it's not in areas that I thought they were going to be. It was totally different areas to the ones that I had mapped out and was confident.
And that's really funny. I had a similar sort of experience. So in the last yearish, 18 months, anytime I would go out, pretty much I would be able to find deer. So I sort of went, right, I've kind of got this down on being able to find them, but just couldn't couldn't land that shot, just angles or timing or whatever. So, sometimes just it's a bit of luck and just a matter of timing. So, but the fact we were hunting 2 years ago now down in Victoria, we did the houseboat thing with a group of friends, and I found a Sambar stag and got honked by it and couldn't get a shot because it was only quite brief. But even that in itself was just amazing because I'm like, I'm actually finding these on my own. It's not someone taking me to their spot. I'm actually being able to find them. So that was just, yes, it would have been great to have brought that stag home, but that in itself was so exciting. So it's funny. It's not, as you say, it's not just always about actually landing that shot, but getting out there and actually seeing these creatures and, being able to find them. And bloody hell, when you get honked by a sambar, that's pretty cool.
I love a quote from Fred Bear, and it says, if you consider an unsuccessful hunt to be a waste of time, then the true meaning of the chase eludes you altogether.
Yeah.
And I could not agree more. And exactly what you just said. This year was my first year down in the rut.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to just hear my first croaks.
Yeah.
And we came in on the back end. But the one of the mornings I got there and had this, croaking buck chasing 3 does come flying past me at 7 meters. And I just too quick to get a shot off. But I can still visualize it. And it's like it happened yesterday. And that was awesome. It was just, it ignited the chase and wanting to do it. And I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I love all the types of hunting. So I'm not just into the deer hunting. That's relatively new to me. And the other forms I really enjoy too. There's just so many different types and challenges for each.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of hunting.
Yeah.
It's not like, I love running and, people think I'm an idiot because I can, I just, as a good way to relax each week, I'll just go for a 10K run and just chuck a podcast in and I'm good. But I don't think I could ever be someone that's a marathon runner.
Yeah.
Because there's not that much difference in it.
Yeah.
Okay, you might run in a little bit of a different area, but the reality is it's the same thing. You're running the same amount of kilometers trying to beat it at the same time.
Yeah.
Hunting is just so diversified. There is so many types, ways. It's just something that you could spend lifetimes learning about. And I think that is the allure as well. And then I also I think about how hard it would have been when we say 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
How hard would it have been for our First Nations people on the landscape, running around the bush with, a boomerang and a spear, trying to hunt animals.
Yeah.
It's just my, level of I'm so impressed. It's just like, how the hell how did we survive as a species? And whether you look, and I love Meat Eater, I always have. And, when they talk about their First Nations people and all the different things, and man, it's so fascinating and interesting. And I just think, how the hell did we evolve and do this for, hundreds of thousands of years?
Well, that's what I said before. We joke about at home, if we were relying solely on it, and we've gotten better in the last, couple of years, but if we were relying solely on our hunting over, the first couple of years, we would have been bloody vegan. So it was not going well. But it really is about the chase and about getting out. And, and as I say, because Rod and I do it together and we've been learning it together, it's actually been something for us to get out and do together. So that's been fantastic in itself as well, because we don't really have a common hobby outside of this. And this has become such a key part of, our time and our lives now. So that's just such a turnaround from where we were a few years ago, and just such a change, but it's great.
I was talking to a mate the other day, shout out to Sam, and we were talking about this because I'm really happy my wife doesn't hunt because, we met playing representative sport and we're pretty competitive. And for me, I really do feel if we were both into it, it would be a competition, and then the amount of time I'd get to hunt would be halved because she'd want me to watch the kids and she'd get out there. So I sort of feel very lucky in the sense that she doesn't want to hunt, and I don't want that to change. So if you do listen to this, Natalie, just stay the way you are. It's fine. So it's very interesting to see. I understand that bond and wanting to, doing it together, and that would strengthen your relationship. So I see that side of it as well. So it's it's an interesting one. All right, let's get into it because the first one's come. Massive props. Well done.
Finally.
Tell me about it.
So it actually was on a private blog. As I said, I think people had started to feel a bit sorry for me in the club. So I was getting a few offers from people, come on, let's go out, let's go for a hunt. But when I say a private blog, so it was on a block down near Orange. So a mate of ours sort of went, hey, come on. And it took us it actually took us a couple of years to organise this hunt with him, because we'd initially been going to go pre-COVID. And then, of course, the world ended for a while, so I had to wait for that to pass. So this was just a few weeks ago. Finally managed to line it all up. And Matt just sort of said, okay, we'll head to this particular spot that he knows. It's usually pretty good, and we'll sit on the top of the hill on Saturday afternoon and just watch and wait and see what happens. And we jumped out of the car, everyone got the gear together, and we were about to wander off, and sort of everyone was doing a bit of a scan around just to have a bit of a look. And Matt sort of went, there's a few deer over that way. Do you feel like a bit of a walk? And it's completely the opposite direction of what we're headed for. So I went, yeah, okay, no worries, let's go for a walk. So, up and down over hills, so you sort of get a glimpse of them and they'd be gone, get a glimpse and then they'd be gone. And wandering along. And this is actually probably the thing that I was really pleased about, was I spotted the deer that I got, because when you're on a block that you've not been on before and it's with someone that it's, inverted commas, their block, it can be a little bit of, there's a deer, go shoot it. So Matt was a bit ahead of me. Rod was a bit behind me, and I was sort of meandering along and went, hang on, what's that? Through a tree, a couple of steps to the right, and then went, oh, yeah, that's a deer bud. So then I madly tried to signal to the other guys to stop walking, and there's a deer and there's some headgear on it, but it's only a little headgear because it's only a little spiker. And Matt just sort of came and had a look. He's like, yeah, come on, let's get that one. But I think because I've had such a bad track record, I was so convinced that I wouldn't get this animal. So set up actually with Matt's tripod, which was fantastic, because we're on the side of a hill, couldn't lay prone, nothing to rest against. And went, okay, the tripod was great, which was excellent. And sort of waited, because, of course, the bloody things turned straight directly facing us, still munching away. Less than 100 metres. It was really an ideal spot. Waited for another few seconds and then crack. And I saw it hit the deck through the scope. I saw its belly. It didn't move again. It was one kick and it was gone. But I actually turned to the boys like, did I get it? So convinced that it wasn't going to happen. And they both thought I was quite hysterically funny. Had a good laugh at me. But and that was it. So as I say, it was such a great thing though to have spotted it myself, and obviously got the shot off myself, and then so little fallow spiker, first one for the cabinet.
That's so cool. I love hearing people's first stories, and I was lucky enough to be on a hunt. In my last one, I was taken to a private block, and Gabby, such a good bloke, he took myself and another person, Sam, out to try and get the first deers. And Sam was lucky enough to get one. So I was so happy for him. It was fantastic. And just being involved in that was super rewarding for me. Yeah. And then going through the process, so obviously gutting and doing all that, and we did it, and really good blokes. We got back to Gabby's house, and they decided that I'd get half the meat because we were all out there together. And I was like, you sure? Like, it's your first deer, and I'd be fine with it if not. And they're like, no, of course, that's part of it. So I was super appreciative. And so we broke up the deer, and the boys were hanging, I think they were hanging the legs and giving me a shoulder. And so I wanted to skin it out, and I was going to bone it out, but decided, no, probably not, just skin that. That's fine. And went to wash something, and I came back, and Gabby's dog, Ticker, the little sneak, jumped up onto the ute and came back. So I've come back to the ute. I'm like, I left it there. Or maybe one of the boys grabbed it. So I've gone, okay, did anyone touch it? And then we sort of worked out that, Ticker's over there chewing on this nice skinned bloody shoulder of venison. So but it was such a great experience and something I won't forget, just being there. And whilst I didn't get to see the shot, I was at a different side of the property. It was really cool to have those conversations and just do the whole thing. And then when Sam's cutting it up and learning, and Gab was talking him through the different parts too, that it's all just memorable stuff, and it's so good to be a part of that and to be on that journey and share that experience. So, a big shout out to both of them, and well done, Sam. So, what do you shoot with? What did you take it down with?
So I've got a Weatherby Vanguard Camilla 7mm 08. So it's the Camilla range that they do is actually designed for women. So it's shorter in the stock, higher in the comb. It's got a narrower hand grip. So even though it's, and a shorter barrel as well. So standard 7mm 08 in its action, but the stock's all designed for women. So that's kind of my hunting gun.
I am a massive fan of that caliber. Yeah. It's such a good caliber, and it was one I was really tossing up between. I ended up going down the 308 version, but it was between the 7mm 08 and the 308, and it was only on ammo basically that I sort of went, 308 is probably the better choice. But I bought that in the Weatherby Vanguard, so it's one of the things. Does it have a floor plate, or does it have a detachable magazine?
Floor plate.
Yeah. See, I'm pretty much talked myself in. I'm going to sell it because I hate it in a state forest, having to drop out the ammo when you're going through exclusion zones and all that. I've just found it's annoying, and I must be hunting state forests where...
One advantage, you can never leave your mag at home.
That's true, but I also feel that if you did, you can also still chamber around and then you just have one. So there is a way around that. But yeah, it's just been, I don't know, it's something so small, but it's something that's really annoying me. And then when I've got my Ticker T3X in the 243, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And I just drop the magazine out and then I'm good. And then I can just pop it straight back in and we're good. Like, it's not as fiddly, and it's just, for some reason, it's a real big bugbear for me at the moment. So I'm sort of on this little, decision of going, do I keep it? Because other than that, I really like the gun. It's a nice spiral flute. It's the Meat Eater edition.
Oh, yeah.
Looks great. It feels pretty good. It's just that one little thing. So I'm still trying to work out, do I overcome that, or do I, push through with it? But I'm leaning towards, I think I'll move on. But I don't know yet.
I got to say the 7mm is a really good caliber, So, you got to be careful on what ammo, but you could actually hunt the bigger guys with it as well. But it's just a really nice all-rounder caliber. So
I am hanging for the 7mm PRC. I'm just waiting. I've heard so many good things about it, and I'm just waiting for it to have a bit more variety in rifles and to be landed here too. So that's the other thing.
Our safe is chockers, so I'm like, we can't.
Isn't it an addiction? I said this, like, part of the WA thing when it's like limited to 5 guns. I went, what the hell? Like, how could, what? Like, okay, yes, 10 if you do both target and hunting. I think it was 10 for just target, which that confuses the hell out of me as to why hunting would be less when you need multiple calibers for different animals.
Yeah.
But that sucks. I was sitting there going, I don't think like I could get under 10 when I get everything that I want to get. Like, that's such a limited number. But
well, that's the thing. Like, I think I've got shotgun 22, 223, 7mm, and 300. So I've got 5. So
so it's not hard to do.
Yeah.
And then you think, I still, like, I look at mine, I think I've got 6 off the top of my head, and I go, hey, I've got gaps.
Yeah.
I need to get a 223. The 7mm PRC, I want to get that. I want, there's those elements to it too that I sit there and go, and then the styles. Like, I've got my I've got a 22, but then I would like, another different style 22, and then same as the 223, and then I like the look of the new Taipan, and it's like there's just so many different things to it too. To say it's just something you can lose yourself in for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, how did you go butchering the deer? How did you take it out whole? Did you quarter it up? What did you do?
We skinned it out there because I didn't want to keep the hide on this one because it was molting something terrible and it was just nothing special. So left the hide behind and then basically just quartered it up into a couple of the backpacks and humped it back to the car a couple of Ks. That's my preference, is to kind of keep it in the bigger chunks to get it back to camp or to the car or wherever we might be going, and then deal with it there. If we're coming home, if we're out and about and we're camping somewhere, coming home the next day, we'll just shove it in the esky pretty much straight away and then deal with it when we get home and break it up from there, which always makes me laugh when we get home and there's, my, white bench top in my beautiful suburban kitchen and there's, just meat everywhere. But that's the preferred way that I go about it, because then it just gives you more time as well to work out your cuts, get your trimming nice, shovel your other bits that are going through the mincer off to the side and all that sort of thing. So, and it tends to be a bit cleaner if you do it at home as well. So we were actually at a property that the club's got access to a couple of weeks before this, and Rod got a couple of deer. So, which is actually really nice when you can throw them just on the tailgate of the ute and trundle them back to camp and deal with it there. So that's actually become a bit of the joke, because when I talk about, I can find deer, is that the last couple of trips that we'd been on before I got my deer, I was finding them, but then he was the one that was actually getting the shot.
See, this is the competition thing.
Yes.
I'm so glad my wife doesn't want to shoot the animal. She's happy to cook it and she does a great job.
Yeah.
Hey, win-win for me.
Yeah. So you talk about that. I was sort of having a laugh there thinking, because there may have been a moment where I marched up to him after he'd shot one of the deer that I'd spotted, literally laid my rifle on the ground and went, "This sucks, I quit," and walked off. The frustration bubbled over a little bit at that point in time.
So is it just deer? I know, it's obviously a big part, and especially your role with ADA and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you dabble in sort of other species as well?
The focus for me is deer. Rod's gotten the odd pig on occasion as well. So, and if they're in the right areas, we'll take sort of back legs and whatnot off of those. Obviously being very, very careful with pig. But I'm actually doing the study so I can do my wit test and go after ducks as well. So obviously that's a bit controversial at the moment in different areas, but the whole ducks on rice stuff and all that sort of stuff. So, but get that wit test done first so that we can then look at that, because I don't mind a good roast duck.
Oh, that does have, it does a lot for me. I sit there and go, I'm a big duck fan. So being able to go and get some and then have that, I'm pretty big on doing that. So I believe it's online now.
Yes.
That is a real big benefit. So I'm definitely going to have a crack at the online side and get into that part, because I think that's just another string in the guitar, I guess, that
just
you want
another
to use.
Opportunity. So, it's all complementary.
Exactly. And that's what I sort of like. I'm very big on, I love fishing and I love spear fishing and I love hunting, and I sort of think that they all complement each other.
Yeah.
And that, if you are able to harvest, whether it be red meat, whether it be, rabbits, whether it be duck, whether, and then also have the opportunities to, get the seafood side of it too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, we're so damn lucky in this country to have that plethora of resources at our fingertips if you want to just get out there and chase it.
And then you throw your veggie garden in on top of that as well.
Exactly.
And how amazing is it to sit down to a meal and look at your plate and go, I got all that, or I grew all that. So, and that's it comes back to, that whole food security and providence piece. It's just something a bit magic when you look down at the plate and go, I did that.
Well, it's a sense of accomplishment. I've mentioned I had a bit of an idea to breed quails and have them for meat. And look, it went a little astray with the majority of them getting out the first day, but we're back on track, and I managed to salvage 4, and then I caught one that had got out the next day and somehow had come back to its mates and I'd got it. But they've just started laying eggs. So it was really funny. It was sort of like a celebratory moment that we, cooked up the first quail egg.
Yep.
But it was so small.
Yeah.
And I did share it with the wife, and I was, I was like, yes, my quail program is working. And then she was saying how much that she does most of the things for them, which is actually true. But I'm still claiming because it's my idea, and it's a partnership as far as I'm
it's
concerned.
It's a family enterprise.
Exactly. So I've just bought my little incubator. They're starting to pump out some eggs, and now we're moving on to phase 2. And the plan will be to get them up and be able to eat them because we've got the chickens, we've got 6 of those things, and they just lay like crazy. Probably not enough because the kids, like we eat like 10, 12 in a sitting of eggs. So it's like, geez, it starts to get expensive. So when you're doing it on your own, and it's a little bit of hard work, but I just find also you don't waste the meat or you don't waste eggs or you don't, because you have put that effort into it or whether it be myself or my wife, you don't want to waste it and you want to make the most of it. So I just feel when I'm cooking everything, I feel that I'm treating it with more respect.
And that's the thing too. We spoke earlier about people say, why do you need to hunt? You can just go and get it from the supermarket. And you can, but that ease of having access to everything, just running up the road, food waste in this country and basically in every westernized nation
it's horrific.
It's horrendous. Horrendous. And that's kind of where part of my canning stuff comes in and learning some of these old skills. My latest thing has been learning how to make jam because a friend's got a mulberry tree. So I've been getting bags of mulberries, so what am I doing with these things? Okay, learn how to make jams and things like that. So it's how do we not waste? How do we use what we've got? And whether it is a piece of venison or, quail eggs, but you suddenly have just that much more respect for it, I think, when you've had to work for it and put some effort into it.
I agree. And I just think, and I'll put my hand up, I was guilty of it before getting into hunting and the like. The amount of times I probably threw out meat that I'd bought from the supermarket and I didn't think twice because it had expired or whatever may have happened. And when you're investing the time, the effort, the travel, the planning, the equipment to chase these animals, you're not going to let that just spoil because it, as you said, it's the most expensive free meat you'll ever get. And it is that exactly because it is not something that you can just, here's $5 and I've got it on a little plastic plate. And then you're invested in it so much more and you knew how hard it was to get or the time it's taken to get it. And you want to use every skerrick of it because you don't want to waste any of it because it has more value. Not from a financial perspective, but from a perspective of you've earned it. And the blood, sweat and tears is the perfect sort of analogy that's what it's taken to get. So, no, I appreciate that side of it. It's such a good thing. So tell us about the ADA. Sydney branch, I love the fact that ADA are out there and that I am very big on wanting to promote groups and associations that are fighting the good fight. So I want to hear more about the Sydney branch. Where do they meet? How often? What's the go there?
So Sydney branch is the largest in New South Wales. So we'd probably get 50 plus members to a monthly meeting, which is, not bad. So we meet the first Wednesday of every month, 7:30 p.m. at Emu Plains Sporting Club. They do a nice schnitzel at the club. So lots of people come down, have dinner, bring the family. Some people bring the kids along too for the meeting. And it's usually a nice social night, and we make sure that there's some form of either education or entertainment on at each month's meeting. So that might be some months a general hunting chat. It might be a how do you start hunting. But then we've had nights where we've had a first aid person come along and do some, survival type stuff. We've had a snake expert come along and talk about dealing with snakes. So that's sort of really, really fun stuff. So I'm not sure when this one will go out, Matt, but make sure you join us for the November meeting that I emailed you about as well. So first Wednesday in November, so it's actually the 1st. So we'll have Alex Proft from Aussie Bush Harvest coming along. So we also get people that just great hunters and interesting to learn from. So as I say, it's probably been key for me in that branch with a great group of people that have really gotten me into this whole scene and into the whole hunting thing.
That's cool. I did have the pleasure of interviewing Prof D on the last podcast, and he's such a good guy, very knowledgeable. So he's a good guest to definitely have out there. So I think this will probably come out just before. So if you are listening, get on down there if you can. It's open to non-members as well, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So I've loved the fact that you've come on the podcast. Super thankful for hearing your story and journey. And it's so great to see someone stepping up, putting themselves out there. And we need more women in the sport and really taking that driving, leading sort of role like you're doing. So well done. Continue to charge. I'm super excited to get out there to a meeting soon. And we'll catch up in person. That'll be great.
Great to have you along. Can't wait.
All right, guys, thanks for listening and bye for now. If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.